All right, looks like we are live, and this is episode 16 of Come Home America with Nick Hankoff, the podcast that seeks to navigate and narrate the twin crises in America of order and identity. So it's been a while. And I was going to do a show right after, even I wanted to do it during the storming of the Capitol. And you see some like some damage here on my left eye. It's like I got the COVID vaccine or something, right? But no, I was just having these horrible side effects from this prescription that I take. So long story short, I was not camera ready. But, I think in the future, I'll be doing some more live shows like this. It's easier for me. I don't have to worry about production, really. I can just put it out there. But I think also in the future, I'll just be doing some screen records for you guys, so you have more to look at than this, what's going on here. But it's good to be with you, and we have so much to talk about. Is it like a bad news? Is it good news? What happened at the storming of the Capitol? Who cares? I mean, it's not a big deal. So we're going to get to that. But I think like what this all has to do with ultimately is a battle for legitimacy. And whether that's legitimacy of narratives, legitimacy of powerful institutions in the country, there's obviously this big reaction from the storming of the Capitol, and how significant it will be in the long term. No one really knows for sure, but we know definitely that it's not as big of a deal as they were making it during the events, and then even the coverage that's come up to us even at this point. People are still pearl clutching. I saw someone say it was not like Pearl Harbor, it was like pearl clutching harbor. So yeah, if it was a domestic terrorist attack, it's an attack on pearl clutching harbor, apparently. And now look, people died, not the least of which was a woman who was unarmed. I think everyone was unarmed as far as I can tell. I haven't found news reports of folks being armed, but certainly the only shot that was fired, I believe one shot fired during the storming of the Capitol, was on this woman who, all I know was she was a veteran, and I think she was in some war zone abroad. There's so many, but she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, I guess, and we'll see what happens with that. Either Capitol police officer or Secret Service agent, whoever it was that gunned her down and killed her unarmed. She died. There will not be any George Floyd-esque murals for her, no streets named after her, no real memory of her, except that, the only message I've heard is that we should be happy that, some other white woman, some other Karen, some other Trump supporter is dead now. Who cares? So that's where we're at. It's where to begin. I think to just try and take a different tact on this than what some other folks are saying. The lines are being drawn now, whether you're on one side of the argument or the other. I'm going to try and take a different view, although I think it's pretty clear ultimately which side I'm on if we are choosing sides. So the Come Home America position, for a long time, and actually in my most recent newsletter that I put out, the message was that patriots are considering just disregarding the Constitution, and it's due to this moral hazard in the country that we sort of feel like what we're doing is right, so we can sort of justify it, or we can just say that the Constitution, it doesn't matter to the side that's out to get us, so why should it matter to us? What are the rules of the game that we're playing? And I just think this is the point that we're at, where this moral hazard is seeped into everything, and it's hard to get a grounding on what's the appropriate response to things like this. Was this event appropriate? So first of all, let me just get my criticisms of Trump out of the way, because I think that, there's a lot of folks out there pointing out that Trump really is responsible for this. And, I don't think he's fully responsible. I don't know how much responsibility he has, but I do have some criticisms of Trump, who I voted for, but now I'm sort of glad, I'm relieved that he lost, right? We don't know, but that he's not going to be the next president in just a couple weeks. The reason why I'm relieved at this is because I think he's really shown the extent to which he can lead at this time. And folks forget how big his win was in 2016. It just feels so inevitable at this point. But at the time, it really was a much needed shock. And we're not going to relive all that history. But where is that vision now? Where is that leadership? And Trump did not exhibit that even up to January 6th. In regards to this Stop the Steal rally. And that's really my issue with this. I'll try and be brief with this analysis, but you call the rally Stop the Steal, and then there's no other parameters, no real vision, no leadership around this. I think Ali Alexander claims that he founded Stop the Steal. So, okay, and maybe in his mind, it was going to work out a different way. But where was the leadership? Where were the parameters? What was the end point? What's the end goal of all of this, right? And stop the steal of the election. That means really stop the steal of your country. And so then to expect people not to storm the Capitol, I mean, if someone's stealing your country, it seems like storming the Capitol might be a compromised position. So I think in some ways we can feel grateful that things weren't worse than they were on January 6th. But what was the end goal? I mean, I listened to parts of Trump's speech on January 6th, at the beginning of the rally before the march, and he didn't say, I mean, maybe he didn't see it coming. No one really saw that the security was going to be so lax, and so we couldn't predict how bad it was going to be. That people would just get waltzed right into the Capitol, more or less. There was some struggles, some scuffling, but also there was some police that really just let people in. And so maybe that wasn't foreseen. But I think also you do have to sort of plan for, what you may not foresee, in the sense that stop the steal. What is the point that you stop at? And Trump could have said on January 6th or prior, we want to, stop the steal. But if we can expose the steal and beat them next time, or whatever he could have said, it would have been better than really, frankly, nothing, and just leaving the potential all out there. And so, that's just what happened. People went into the Capitol, and most of them, I think, were more or less just in a celebratory mood, taking selfies, not doing a whole lot of damage. But of course, we were all familiar with the images of the folks who did real damage to the Capitol or stole property or whatever. And so there, to take a nuanced take on it, I just don't think ultimately it was a huge deal. Crimes will be crimes will be prosecuted, I guess. But the thing is more than that is going to actually happen, right? There's going to be a big crackdown, and we're getting the precipitation of that right now with what's happening with social media. On Facebook, on Twitter, there are giant purges. I think this channel, and one of the reasons why I decided to go live, I mean, this channel even could be taken off of YouTube for all I know, just because I try to play it safe on here with YouTube's guidelines, but who knows, So I'm going to be creating alternative media accounts, but ultimately, like, what the government would like to do, what the Biden administration or what the Democratic Party would like to do, they'll certainly use this as sort of a Charlottesville 2.0. And again, Charlottesville, another thing that was made to be like a bigger deal than it actually was. But these points they'll use, instead of us talking about a whole summer long of arsonists and looters and rioters and just billions of dollars of property destroyed. And then, for this small event to happen, and for a lot of these people involved to, either own businesses or to be, the types of people who lost their jobs and who didn't, weren't the types to work from home, not that fortunate, they suffered under the COVID lockdown. So all of these frustrations being pent up and then being, demonized by the institutions that run this country, then this is like one thing that can pop off. What do you expect? And so I think like the way to actually look at the Capitol storming is, what did you expect, first of all? And then, we don't have to condone every part of it, but at the same time, it's not a big deal for us to be kowtowing and apologizing and lamenting over and saying how it's the worst thing, the worst attack on democracy. Give me a break. So I think what we actually have to do is be absolute in terms of the violence. Again, bad move. It makes it worse for everyone. But also, we don't scapegoat those folks. We don't scapegoat Trump. We don't scapegoat any real facet of any one portion of the society, because I think this is all our country, and we all have to take some responsibility in some way, even those who sit back and laugh and think that they're just totally detached from this. I think everyone can find, in their hearts, some way that they could have done better to somehow make this country a better place than it is. So there's no sense in scapegoating folks. We just end up with another scapegoat after that. And I think really the lesson has to be a peaceful separation. And that's also what this show has been about for some time now, talking about secession, talking about really decentralizing power. And you can hear actually a reenactment of the storming of the Capitol above me now. So I hope that the stormers don't come downstairs into the basement here and interrupt the show, but you'll please excuse them. I don't know who let them in the doors. So we need to think in terms of the facts that these people, right or wrong, whether or not you like the folks who stormed the Capitol or not, they're your neighbors, they're your countrymen, and there's really no way I can imagine that the country just peacefully separates, even though that's what I want. What's going to have to happen is some sort of give and take is going to be established that's going to reestablish political lines, that's going to leave power in the hands of people locally. And we can all still remain somewhat this United States of America if we decentralize power, and we don't have to like what our neighbor does, but they don't have to really rule over us either, right? So really, the impetus is on those who impose on us, to allow the imposed to go their own way. And this is the subject of Jeff Deist's book, his little pamphlet. I think they called it a book, but at the Mises Institute, you can find the speech on YouTube too. Jeff Deist talking about the imposed and the imposers. And that is really the dividing line in the country now. And folks who went to the Capitol really feel like they're on the defensive here. And I think that the victors in the 2020 election should really think twice before they feel so emboldened to try and stomp this out or crack down on all of this. I think we could see worse than what we saw on January 6th. And that's not not condoning anything that happened on the 6th, but folks, this is not to draw any equivalency to terrorism. I hate that people call everything they don't like domestic terrorism now. But if we want to talk about terrorism, let's talk about it. 9/11. What was the lesson after 9/11? Ron Paul got it right. Ron Paul talked about blowback and the policies that were, really, really stoking that blowback. And Ron Paul, for his trouble, was called a terrorist sympathizer. And so I'm sure I'll be called a terrorist sympathizer for trying to explain what happened on January 6th and why that is, we could see that as a form of blowback against something. And against what? It is against the rot of the institutions that run this country illegitimately. And, it's really, like people say, Martin Luther King said, the riots are the voiceless, the cry out of the voiceless, whatever it is. These folks have no political means, so they go to the Capitol, and this is what they think is the best choice for them. I would much rather see folks go and rebuild at home and call on their state legislatures, call on their county and local governments to take more control locally and to really nullify what's going on in Washington, D.C. in so many ways. And that would at least, get us away from scapegoating each other and trying to win the next battle in the long, cold civil war that seems to be heating up. Okay, so I'm critical of Trump. I think the whole thing actually was not a big deal. Trump's speech January 7th which was just yesterday, the day after the storming. Trump calls for healing and reconciliation, and that kind of talk really makes me sick. Trump was actually elected to be, at the very least, against the PC talk, and we didn't know what he was going to do, but we knew he wasn't going to talk the politically correct line and follow that. And now he's fallen into that, and so that is a disappointment. If it means that Trump sort of fades into obscurity and the Trumpers don't feel like he represents them anymore, I'll be fine with that, because I came on the Trump train quite late, and quite conditionally, as you all know. So, I'm not a super stoked Trump person. I've really been anti-Trump, and the future of Trump at this point, I think it's still relatively strong. It does seem like the people, even who they might, may not like what Trump said, they don't really take it as a stab in the back per se. They think Trump is, they'll have excuses for him, right? They'll say Trump had to say it, or else they'd remove him from office, so he had to say something. And that's might be true. Trump might be scared. I don't know, but again, we don't want to scapegoat any one particular individual, even Trump or even Biden, for any one, any of the big problems that are going on in the country. But let's talk a little bit about social media and the media crackdown at this point, because they are going full speed ahead with this purging of society, dehumanizing people, depersonalizing people, taking them off social media. They're going after individual accounts, but also in the media, really going after Trump supporters in general, and anyone on the right or anyone that fits another certain description. And a lot of people say they want to see a breakup of these social media companies, that they want to see removal of Section 230 or whatever it is, but to attack these media companies and to ensure that there's a place online for everyone in the public to have free speech. And at first, maybe that sounds good. At first, maybe that sounds like, we need to reach wide swaths of people with our message. And the only way to do that is with a wide open public platform. But is that really what's going on anymore on these public platforms? Even YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever, are people changing their minds through threads on any of these websites, some content? Some people are, some people are waking up. Some people are getting red pilled. Am I allowed to say red pilled anymore? People are being persuaded, but really that doesn't need to be our goal anymore. And I think, actually, as a matter of fact, I think this is what Jeff Dice is writing about at the Mises Institute now. I haven't read it, but I think I saw a headline towards this end, in the sense that it's post-persuasion America. And so in that sense, I'm not that upset about the social media companies and whether or not they're going to be broken up or we're going to take it to them. I do think the alternatives can serve some purpose if our priority is organizing. People will call it an echo chamber. But if we're organizing with folks and we're able to be listened to by these folks, then we can actually persuade people who are in our quote unquote, our own circle. So maybe those are the folks who we actually need to be persuading, instead of just trying to persuade any number of people in the public. I think if people go on to Parler, or if people go on to whatever other, MeWe or whatever other social media platform, then maybe you find like-minded individuals and you can sort of learn stuff from them too. There's not just two ways of looking at the world, right? It's a little more gray than that. So I think it's worth pursuing the alternatives. Now, of course, that doesn't solve the whole problem, because you might be able to create an alternative social media platform, but what about financial institutions? What about payment processors and these other sorts of services that are integral to the internet, and also really just make life a lot easier now, as all of commerce is really online? I think we're going to see the rise of Bitcoin used in these sort of marginalized political groups in the United States, just as you've seen them used by marginalized groups around the world to get around just official blockades and boundaries to trade and transactions on an otherwise open market. So, Bitcoin is going to be more criminalized for that. we've already seen Bitcoin referred to as, just a black market crime money and stuff. But now that Bitcoin's reaching these all-time highs, like hitting over $42,000, there's less talk of that. But they're going to try and demonize Bitcoin. They're going to try and demonize cash. They're going to try and demonize every portal that allows people to voluntarily trade on the free market that's outside the control of the financial elite. And so that'll be an interesting development for the year 2021, I believe, whether or not, especially on the right in America, as it gets more and more demonized and gets banned more and more from different services and online platforms. It'll be interesting to see what other institutions are built up. So we've got the social media, we've got even some alternative news networks, cable news network, or at least sort of like subscription news networks like One American News, Newsmax, all these things. I don't watch them, but we see people moving to them, sort of like Parler. I think I have an account, but I don't use it yet. And so folks are moving away to these different platforms. I think that's a good thing. It would be nice if we, as Americans, could all come together on one public space and maybe folks would be willing to listen, but it just seems like it's more harm than it's worth. It costs more than the benefits, I guess you might say. But ultimately, the way out of this in the short term, you got to figure out some sort of means of mediums of exchange, Bitcoin, whatever it might be, as people get banned off of different payment processors like PayPal and whatnot. So Bitcoin might come into that strategy this year. We'll see. And then, the social media platforms, people are going to have to jump on a few different accounts and see which platform's best. We might have to use multiple platforms to get our message out. And then ultimately down the line, really what this comes down to and what this show is about is just building those networks at home, in your community. If it's a church, if it's some other club, some other institution, some mediating institution that binds people in real ways, that's not like just a proxy or portal for the Great Reset and the state and the government and the elites. That's what we need going forward. And that might mean starting a family. That might mean homeschooling that family. That might mean all sorts of radical ideas that people just weren't really open to before. It might take that. This is going to be a long, long struggle. Nothing happens overnight. Nothing is the defining moment that changes everything, despite what the media says. So you really have to buckle up and hold on. I know everyone's saying buckle up lately, so I'm saying it, but it is sort of a long-term thing. If it was a matter of simply announcing secession and us being able to deal with our problems in our own home and not worry too much about the existential political threats from DC or other states, then we would get along a lot faster. I don't know how soon that's going to come up. Hopefully we see some progress towards that end. But until then, this is still the United States of America. It's still going to be too centralized. So it's going to take a little bit more creative thinking, patience, and some virtue to get through all of this. So I guess I'll leave you with that, my general thoughts. If you think that I'm wrong about the storming of the Capitol, if you think that I'm wrong about Trump one way or the other, let me know in the comments. But I do appreciate you guys subscribing, and I've got some great guests coming up in the show next week, and I will be doing more of these shows. I had my medical issue. I got my COVID vaccine and my eye fell like that. No, I'm just kidding. But I will be taking care of that and getting you guys more quality content more often. But I have been very steady on the newsletter. So check out the newsletter. That is at nickhankoff.substack.com. It's actually called The Bulletin. So we have The Bulletin, your weekly email, what was it? Supplement to the Come Home America podcast. And so we will be giving you more content in the email and here on YouTube, as well as Spotify, iTunes, everywhere else podcasts are found. So thank you so much for tuning in, folks. We will talk to you again, certainly before the inauguration. Keep your eyes peeled and please share the content. Thank you so much. God bless.